as we discuss flexibility, and I'm conscious we are perhaps the last session, so a quick request if we could all actually just stand and get a little flexible for 2 seconds, could we? If everyone's comfortable? Yeah, let's just stretch and get a little, don't run away. The organizers have agreed to lock the doors so that no one leaves. I'm joking. A little bit of a stretch, a little bit. Thank you for joining us, and I think it's an absolute honor, to have all of you all as the audience, and a wonderful conversation with some, amazing people that, I managed to befriend over the last 30 minutes or so, I think, at the conference. So yeah, I mean, the big question is, what are we talking about in terms of flexibility, And interestingly for me, I'm an HR person, as you would have seen in the intro, and none of these three are HR, So, very practical insights from practitioners on what do they really want out of HR, and where are they not finding things. And I think that's really what the next 25 minutes or so is going to be about before we pass it on to you for questions, et cetera, et cetera. So before just to kind of kick us off, and maybe let's do a quick round table, starting with you, Elena.
Sure.
What does the word flexibility really evoke in you? When we talk about flexible work processes, etc.
Sure.
Could you share a little bit from Deel?
So nice to meet you, everyone. Super excited to be here. I know it's late afternoon, so thanks to still be here. I'm leading international sales at Deel. Flexibility for me, it will be an easy answer, even though I'm not an HR, but talking to HR every day and being in HR tech for a few years. We are remote for day one. So today we are 1,200 at Deel, and we are based in 75 countries, from France to Singapore to Jamaica. So we are flexible from the beginning, which allow us to hire the best people from all over the world. And I'm super excited to help my client to do so, because we are doing compliance and payroll for global team. So let's say you are a Singapore company and you want to hire someone in India, in Vietnam, and you don't have an entity there, but these people really want to go and work from there. I'm able to do it today. So that's about, in a nutshell, what's flexibility for me.
So keep the mic with you, Elena. So I'm going to stay with you for a moment. It was fascinating to chat with you earlier today, and literally the thought in my mind is geography has become history, So I like the way you said, instead of taking talent to where work is, you guys are helping taking work to where the talent is. So could you help us with a little example of, at a process level, how are you at Deel, or how are you helping your clients really do that, taking work to where the talent is?
I think one of the keys to have the right tools in place. We are heavy Slack user, because when you work asynchronous most of the time in different time zone, 24/7, you must have the right tech Slack. And over communication is better. So that's one. Second is to be mindful about the time of the different people. So I'm not going to lie, sometimes it's a bit tricky when I have to talk to my teammates in Brazil, Australia, US, and France at the same time. But with the right tool in place, that's feasible. Second, I will say the right onboarding. A lot of people are not comfortable with remote work. They are new with it. They used to work, like during COVID, they were forced to do it. But after COVID, they had to adapt themselves as well and find, for the company, but for themselves, how they're gonna work together. So make sure that they are mindful about it, and you onboard them properly. And that's, I think, the key challenge for HR today.
Thank you, Elena. Really appreciate your sharing. Moving on to you, Ruslan. So another thing I learned about Ruslan is he's delighted that he actually had the opportunity to get selected into HR and people transformation as a lifer in P&L role. So Ruslan, as you lead large-scale transformations, etc., for Petronas, flexibility, how have you managed to bring that to life at Petronas?
Yeah, thank you. Hi, I'm Ruslan from Petronas, just from across the causeway. I have been a lifer in a P&L role, and when you look at transformation, HR transformation, I've always looked at it from the business side, right? And to that end, I think flexibility for me is the flexibility to allow the business to win. So when we create systems, we create solutions for the business, it's about creating that flexibility for that business to win, first and foremost. Secondly is around the flexibility to allow our talents to achieve their fullest potential and to be at their best. So, I mean, those are the two, what flexibility here means to me.
Wonderful. And I'm going to then ask a follow-up question. And I really like the premise of the why of flexibility being, am I really enabling the business to succeed? And coming from a business that is kind of in the throes of disruption, at least a part of the business with clean energy, electric vehicles, etc. Any examples of how the business is embracing flexibility and how the HR is partnering you in that?
Brilliant. So we are in the throes of disruption, right? And you know, what we need Petronas to do is to be able to respond to that disruption, right? And what we found was that whatever processes that we had put in place, although we have kept up, was not enough to allow that business to respond quickly enough to that disruption, because it's, you know, people are delivering products that are better, faster, cheaper, and cleaner than us, right? So I think that's point number one. And for us in designing solutions, we want to make sure that we allow the business as much as possible to co-create with us, tell us what they need to win. And you know, I was selling lubricants in Asia Pacific, in India, Bangladesh, in the streets of Indonesia. Sometimes we were pulling our hair out because we found that that whatever policies we had in place was not sufficient enough to make us win, right? And we wished that HR, rather than be in headquarters and tell us what the solutions are, would come and really listen to us. So I think that's what's happening now. We realized that, you know, to eat the elephant whole was going to be very difficult, right? Because Petronas is 50,000 people, we're in 50 countries, we're in all sorts of businesses across the value chain, and we're also moving into new businesses, businesses that we're not accustomed to. And the business was demanding us that we wanted to be agile and flexible. So we had to move, as an example, we had to move from process-led to principle-led. So we allowed the business to understand what were the principles and philosophies, and they work out how to make it happen, right?
Wow.
So we're not prescriptive. So that's one area where we've been working on.
Okay, I think I'm going to come right back and probe deeper because I got like 4-5 insights here. One is
She
listen.
was much
and
nicer before.
Listen,
now she's asking
listen
me all these tough
deeply.
questions.
No, but I heard listen deeply. I heard don't create one perfect thing, but, you know, co-create. And I also heard define the principle instead of defining processes, because once you define the principle,
Correct.
people would figure the process. So I think some powerful insights there. So we're going to come right back to you, Ruslan, but we have Chee with us. And as you know, as a representative of a company which really says employee experience is at the heart of customer experience. Chee, I mean, so flexibility, I think Elena spoke about geographic flexibility and he spoke about empowerment and segmentation as a way of flexibility. What's your take on flexibility?
Okay, they already mentioned everything that I want to say. Yeah, you can call me Chee from TDCX. TDCX is a BPO company. So for those who are BPO have outsourced, you know how fast-paced the environment is. And we are digital customer experience across 12 countries, and we're extending another 5 countries this year. So that's how the growth of the business is in the digital economy today. So flexibility becomes so important for us, especially in the area that our client wanted us as a partner to be flexible in how we provide the services. So when it comes to the word of flexibility, it is very, very important. It's no longer one size fits all. You see that a lot of companies today, you see that the illustration of big fish and a small fish. So how the small fish become so agile. So I always look at flexibility as the outcome of the processes that we are having today. The rest, agility, is a mindset. That's what people when ask me. So when it comes to flexibility, the key word is how is your people internal flexibility? How's your processes internal flexibility? And how is your system internal flexibility? So in TDCX, we take these 3 pillars seriously because we believe flexibility is the journey that we need to move on. It's not a destination, just to let you know, for those who think that your company is not flexible, it's a journey that we go through. There is no end to the flexibility, but we know that flexibility will help us to be a competitive edge today. And we have seen that of winning many logos today because we are flexible with our client. And that's key from our processes perspective. Are we able to reimagine the processes today? Just talk about talent attraction, talent acquisition. Let's talk about onboarding. Today, you can see that our system is so agile. There's no paper involved. Our so-called processes is lean. That's how we want to drive. And we need to move away manual processes. We need to move away all non-value-added processes. And to get those is not easy, especially the organization. I'm sure that you all have challenges too, where there are leaders, there are your stakeholders that reluctant to say, oh, I want the processes, Chee, I still want the processes, but there's no add value to that. So I always want us to look at flexibility in a way to help us to add value. Will our customer pay the processes or the services that we provided? If it's not, can we be flexible? Can we be faster in providing the services?
Well, actually, those are really wise words, in terms of especially how you, step by step literally articulated it. I'm curious, and maybe we'll go the other way now, and it's just a thought that hit me as I was listening to you, excessive flexibility can cause chaos, so if you literally empower and even more as we say, personalization, and everyone wants to run in a different direction. And then there is synergies of scale and standardization. So to your mind, what's a good way for practitioners to find that balance between standardization and flexibility? Any insights from all your experiences?
Yeah. I was just in a forum yesterday, talk about work arrangement, where I give the analogy of structure, where everyone in the office, versus 100% remote, where very independent. Okay? So ideally, there is no one solution. There are certain roles, certain industry that you can actually have not structure, but still bring in the output. And also the other one, so structured, and you need that to bring the output. So there's nothing wrong. So what I'm trying to say, and today we are talking about hybrid, so it's more on in between nowadays. So we are so flexible in between. So not so extreme in one end. This is what most of the organization, if you look at today, PwC, or even Gallup, when they do the what we call research, they will find that there will be a 20% who are work from office, 20% who are work from 100% working from home, and 60% will be mainly on the hybrid model. So I would say that's what today people are not on the extreme. But I think the end of the day is the business, is the business better. I can't be saying in TDCX, we used to have almost 70% working from home. And right now, we are moving to a hybrid model, which we allow employees to work in office for 3 days and work from home for 2 days. But that works for TDCX, but it won't work for some of the roles. Some of the roles that are facing customers that is financial related, they are 100% in office. There are certain roles, like my role, in a group level, we are all working from home, and it's 100%. So I would say that we want to empower our managers to make that decision. And the most important thing that I mentioned just now, flexibility is a journey. At the end of the day, are we able to bring the value back to the business, back to our employee? That is important. I'll just give you an example. most of our workforce are Gen Y and Gen Z, and 28 years is the average. And we have this group of people that will leave the organization without a job. Okay, thanks to all the rich parents. They don't need to work. That's what the environment is today. And if you don't be flexible and able to listen to them and able to adapt in a win-win, we will be losing all good talent. So I will always say, when we move flexibility as a thermometer, we need to see any thermometer that we move, is it add value back to the business, add value back to the employee? And who will be the best person to know? You, okay, not the consultant, as I always say.
So all the consultants here, our apologies, but that's a candid view, coming in from a practitioner. So moving on to Ruslan, so continuing on that conversation, So let's define the principles, but leave the process to the teams. Now, in that continuum, have you had any struggles with people completely taking it for granted, or do you have any tips as others try and implement it? Because there is always this worry that there'll be too many variants created and there'll be no Petronas approach,
Yeah.
So any insights?
Yeah, I think the in where we are, the environment now requires us to stop talking about standardization, flexibility, spectrum per se. What works for you, right? I'll give you an example. I just want to extend what you just spoke about. When we talk about flexibility in allowing talents to perform at their best, at their full potential, right? And we talk about flexi hours. And to me, one of the biggest shifts that Petronas made, and we've just launched this a couple of months ago after months and months of studying, really listening to what talents and the staff wanted, what the business wanted, was to come to the conclusion that the only way to make this work is to fully trust your employees to make the decision themselves, where they want to work, right? Depending on the job and the role that they play and what they want to do, they decide, right? That's point number one, and I think that's super important, right? And that's a big shift, because from an oil industry that's very traditional, allowing people, and the question you ask is, what about standardization? What about people who abuse this? We don't have to talk about that. If we're hiring them, we have to trust them, right? And what we do is we give them guardrails, because we have to balance as well what the organization needs. So the guardrails we have is, look, default for everyone in Petronas across the world, default work is in the office, right? But we allow you the flexibility to decide yourself. The reason why we say the default works in the office, because we want to still impart values, the Petronas culture, the Petronas way, and we see value in coming and seeing each other. But when and where that happens depends on the talent themselves, or the teams, or the manager, right? Wow. They decide. The second one is we say, manage based on outcomes, not number of hours you clock in, or if you see a person in the office, right? So I think that's super important. And as a guide, we say, you're allowed 8 hours to decide, right? 8 days where you decide where you want to work, but please be in the office the others, right? So those are guides. Those are guides. And I think if you start to empower, you don't debate around that spectrum of standardization. Wow. And
that's a deep thought, in terms of trust and empowerment. And I mean, my reflection goes back to, at Mondelez, we very strongly believe in co-creation, And so a lot of times, policies and processes are not made by HR, but, there are, small groups of people, cross-functional, making it. And then perhaps the guardrails become interesting, because while we give a freedom within the framework, there are framework implications even in terms of taxation, compliances, legal entity structures getting created because someone says, my husband's moved to the US, I want to work from the US. And perhaps that's where your company comes in, isn't it, Elena? So I'm curious to see how is Deel enabling, this, and
Exactly. So I'm fully on board with Ruslan. I think at the end of the day, it's about outcome. It's about the result. Like all the studies show that flexibility produces great income. So how to empower it and how to implement it, that's key. That's like the challenges that HR team gonna have in the next decades. But I think like what matters is to have the right KPI and the right OKR. So if every team in every department have the right metrics, they can work from wherever they want. They can start whenever they want. At the end of the day, like if it aligns with the company results, be my guest. And one of the challenges that they can have indeed is compliance and payroll, and that's what Deel is doing. Like, you can hire literally everyone in a click of a button in 24 hours in more than 150 countries and give them also the full flexibility on how they're going to withdraw their fund. So if like they want to move to India and withdraw 20% of their money in dollar, the rest in Bitcoin, they will have the full flexibility of their fund. So that's what kind of service we can do also.
And I'm curious, in terms of technology enabling flexibility, any quick examples from any of your companies that you want to talk about, if any?
As just now I mentioned that the 3 pillars, yes, technology become so important. And one of the things that definitely when we look at technology, we are moving away. Let's say, give you an example. We move away from VPN. Any one of you still using VPN? I'm sure all of you on VPN. So we move away from VPN, we move to all cloud. There is a question of, okay, security and so on, but we're still pushing away to say that let's be more flexible because VPN is just like firewall. Although it's a security, but it prevents flexibility. The rest, when you're in cloud, you can access from anywhere, especially from home. And just to install VPN is another 3-step process that you have to just log into a VPN before you can access to our system. So that is one example. The other example is single sign-on. I'm sure that in today's environment, there's so many systems. How do we today have a single sign-on rather than every system have their own sign-on? That is what flexibility, and that's what we are pushing that away into the picture. The other one is we are very into UX and UI, user-centric. I think we talk a lot about user-centric. And a lot of time when we develop a system from a HR or we develop a system just from our point of view, especially on the control. So we drive a lot on the user experience. And if you put user experience first, you will find that there's a lot of simplification and add value to your whole system. And that allows the level of what we call lean user-friendliness and also flexibility to our employee rather than it's so rigid. And my only suggestion is actually all the HRM system that we have and the whole suite from a talent acquisition to on the whole life cycle until the person leaving the organization are all integrated. And that is the most important thing. And there's no paper involved. And when you don't have paper involved, that allow flexibility in your overall process. Because when you involve paper, that prolong your process, that and not able for you to be flexible enough when you want to, let's say, 100% working from home. How can you have 100% working from home where you still have a hand out that you need to hand over to somebody? Are you going to ship the paper from one house to another house? So those are the things that we need to be in, and that is proven today, especially in today's BCP.
Thank you. Simple ways of simplifying. So thank you so much.
I'll just add on, if you don't mind. Now, the reason why I wanted to share is I think I'm pretty proud of the team who's doing this, right? And this is around HR, fraternity, embracing technology, embracing analytics, right? So one of the examples that I'd like to share is, we had a team from HR, a team of data scientists, and a team of developers from within Petronas to start to look at all our top talents. We got 1,300 odd top talents that we look at. and the reams and millions of data points that has accumulated over time through assessments, workshops that they've gone through and so on, right? Performance ratings and so on. And now we're able to, we created a software that allows now the talents, the top talents, to be best matched to which critical positions, right? And it's being used now, it's being tested in our PDC, a People Development Committee, at the highest level, where we are now unearthing talents that we didn't know really matched, right, from the system itself. So the machine learning, the AI is able to unearth all these talents. It's great for diversity as well, because then the conversation that happens in the committee is very, very different, right? So that's one way that we are embracing.
That's such a powerful example. And I mean, I must say that eventually the more that happens, and as the machine and the AI learns,
It gets much
HR
better.
then, does not sit in number crunch, right? We're
Correct.
not pulling data, creating
Correct.
tables and putting it on the table. You're actually then inciting from that, and that is
Absolutely.
such an opportunity.
So the conversation is
So-
very different now.
Wonderful. So conscious, we have literally 4 minutes, and I have the joy of sitting with 3 non-HR who are, on this. So you work with HR, obviously, over your life cycles. So I would love to hear from you one, and I'm sure you've had varied experiences, So there would have been some HRs that you felt, I loved working with this person to land the impact, and hey, there are some where you wish that they had changed something about them. So going around the table, starting with you, Alina, or whoever wants to go first, maybe, if you want to collect thoughts. One thing that you love about the function as it is, as you've experienced it, and one real request you have to any HR person, in the room.
Only one?
That is telling. Yes.
I
one.
think to listen to the team, on what you mentioned as well, like to empower the team and not to put too much procedures and too much rules, but really have a support function that will help to grow faster.
Thank you. So dear HR, I hope you heard that. Do not throw the role book, be the enabler. Thank you, and empower. Ruslan?
Yeah, just to set the record straight, I am, after 22 years in P&L role, I'm now HR. I am HR. Right?
Proudly HR.
Proudly HR. But I guess the one of the advice that we keep giving as we're doing this transformation is listen, right? Listen to the business, co-create with them, listen to the talents, respond, right? We always say that the pace at which we respond is never enough, because the pace at which the business is moving and the talent wants are so fast, right? So keep listening and respond quickly.
Wonderful.
Exactly.
So agility and listening, and you have a bill.
So if they want to work from France or from Singapore,
Contact Deel.
let them do. You have solution for that.
What with you, Chee? Your word of...
Ruslan has still my word, listen and act to it. But I'm sure, I'm very impressed for all of you still staying back, especially on this topic on flexibility. So I guess my key takeaway to all of you is I mentioned that flexibility is an output and outcome. That's what I mentioned earlier. And the 2 things as a HR that we need to ask ourselves, in anything that we do, whether transformation, whether any other implementation, whether during the planning, as I said right now, your planning cycle in 2023, what are you trying to solve? What problem, what are the current challenges? What are you trying to solve from the user standpoint? What is the pain point? That's number 1. What's the pain point today? Will flexibility resolve that? The second one is that, will the customer pay for the flexibility?
It's a great
If
question.
the answer is yes, then go for it. And this is my only 2 wisdom advice to all of you, because these are the 2 questions that I always ask myself as a group CHRO. What is actually the pain point? Will flexibility help to resolve? Will my customer, my stakeholder, pay for this flexibility?
But that's
So that's
such a powerful one. And literally, if I was a profit center, will my business pay for my idea, my thought, my partnering is such a concrete way of saying, am I adding value, you know? So thank you for that, Chee. We literally have a couple of minutes. So I'm curious if we have questions from any of you where you want to mine, you know, the minds of this wonderful panel. So any thoughts, any questions? Okay. Could someone pass the mic there, please?
At one of them.
Oh, you can take my mic. Do you want to come up meanwhile? Do take a moment to give us your name and thank you for your interest.
Hi, I'm Raymond. I'm in the HRIS role. Mr. Ruslan, very interesting or powerful example about using machine learning to unearth talent. Just want to know, do you use a feature of a HR system like SuccessFactors to do that, or do you have to build your own Python programming?
So I think the question is that, you know, your data inciting and the example that you gave, did you leverage a platform like SuccessFactors, et cetera, or was it in-house?
No, we did it in-house. We did it in-house. We did Scout. And because the way our data is structured and the way that we structure the critical positions, the success profiles, it was very difficult to have an off-the-shelf. And we had the talents to do it, and we gave it a shot. So it's still early, but we're finding a lot of benefits already by doing this.
And wonderful example, isn't it? Thank you for your question. Folks, very conscious, we are at time. So more questions, do catch them you know, outside. I think a lot of information, wealth of insights, and thank you very much, Chee, Ruslan, and Elena. Thank you, everyone.